All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're diving into something that's super personal for so many of us: the really complex and often totally unspoken dynamics that go on inside immigrant families. We're going to unpack the challenges, those hidden jobs, and the incredible strengths that show up when different generations and cultures come together. For so many children of immigrants, this question just hits differently. It's not just a passing thought, it's the daily grind of trying to balance the world inside your house with the one that's waiting right outside the door. So at home, it might be all about the family unit, about tradition, about your duty to the collective. But the second you step outside, boom, the script flips. Suddenly, it's all about your own ambition, your own independence. And that creates this constant juggling act, this balancing of two identities that can be incredibly tough to get right. Okay, so let's dig into this because at the very core of all this tension is a concept called the acculturation gap. And honestly, it's a huge piece of the puzzle that explains so much of the friction that can pop up in immigrant families. So, what does that actually mean? Well, basically, it's this gap that opens up when kids who are totally immersed in local schools and have local friends just naturally soak up the new culture's language and values way faster than their parents, who have a whole lifetime of their own heritage shaping them. And what's really fascinating here is that isn't just some casual observation. This is a real, formally studied thing. Psychologists actually call it the acculturation gap distress hypothesis. And what it does is it directly links this gap to real psychological stress and conflict for both the parents and the kids. And you can really see how this plays out, right? Kids just leap ahead in picking up the new culture. I mean, they're learning the language at school, they're making friends, they become fluent in all the social cues. But their parents, they often adapt a lot more slowly, holding on tight to the culture that has been their whole world for their entire lives. And this gap isn't just some abstract theory. It has very real consequences. It creates what you could call an unspoken job description for the kids, who end up taking on these huge roles they definitely never applied for. And there's a name for this phenomenon. It's called parentification. It's basically this role reversal where kids have to step up and take on adult responsibilities, not because they want to, but because it's what the family needs to function in a new country. This quote from Dr. Soo-Young Kim just nails it. It really gets to the core of how this happens. It's not like someone sits you down and gives you a job title. These duties are just absorbed out of love, out of necessity, and they just slowly become part of your everyday life. So what does this job really look like day to day? Well, it's being the family's translator for everything from doctor's appointments to legal documents. It's being the cultural bridge, trying to explain social norms. It's being the advocate in situations where your parents might not be taken seriously because of an accent. It is a heavy and often really stressful list of tasks. And get this, research shows this burden is not shared equally. In one study of Mexican American families, it was the firstborn child nearly 42% of the time. And lots of studies also point out that it's very often the eldest daughter who becomes the family's default language broker, and really its emotional backbone. Look, the key thing to get here is that this is so much more than just being helpful. This constant back and forth between languages, cultures, and roles takes a ton of mental and emotional energy. It leads to something researchers call cultural code switching fatigue. And honestly, it can be absolutely exhausting. Okay, so now we've got to peel back another layer. Because for a lot of families, the challenges of just being an immigrant are stacked on top of a psychological inheritance from the past. This is something known as intergenerational trauma. It's this powerful idea that the effects of a really traumatic event, we're talking migration, war, or extreme hardship, they don't just vanish. They can actually get passed down through generations, not through DNA, but through family dynamics, the way people communicate, and parenting styles. So how does this actually work? Well, think of it like this. A parent goes through the original trauma. That experience then shapes how they parent, how they communicate, and the result is that the child can end up inheriting the stress, the pressure, and those survival instincts, feeling the echoes of a trauma they never even lived through. And this often creates what's called intergenerational cultural dissonance, which is basically a fancy way of saying a huge clash in worldviews. Your parents might value the family unit above all else, while you're craving individual boundaries. Or they might stay silent about difficult feelings while you feel a deep need to talk about mental health. And this quote from a second-gen youth participant just makes it so real. It perfectly shows how different cultural ideas about family obligations and money can lead to these intense feelings of frustration and being misunderstood, even when you know deep down that it's all coming from a place of love. And as if all that wasn't enough to deal with, you have these outside pressures, like the whole model minority myth. This stereotype that Asian Americans are just naturally brilliant and successful creates this insane pressure to achieve academically, and that can become a massive source of anxiety and really damage that parent-child relationship. But here's the thing. This is not just a story of struggle. Not at all. The second generation is actively working through all of this complexity. And in doing that, they're actually redefining what it even means to be successful and how to honor their family's journey. I mean, just look at this comparison. It really captures the whole shift. For the first generation, success was often about sheer survival, right? Safety, a stable job, a good title. But for their kids, that definition is getting so much bigger. It now includes things like rest, mental health, autonomy, and living a life that's actually filled with joy. And this is so important to remember. The shift isn't about rejecting your family or your culture. It's about integration. It's about really understanding your family's story and honoring everything they sacrificed by building a life that is truly, authentically yours. And this isn't just an isolated feeling. As career coach Danica Nelson points out, this is a whole generational movement. It's a shift toward a much more complete, more fulfilling idea of what a good life can actually look like. Which really just leaves us with one final, powerful question to think about. So many in the second generation feel this incredible weight to make their parents' sacrifice worth it. But what if the best way to honor that sacrifice isn't just through a fancy job title or a big house, but by building a life of real, genuine happiness? What if that was the dream all along?